So who's right? Suze Orman recommends a 3% withdrawal rate, saying the 4% withdrawal rate is too high. Dave Ramsey said you can easily take out 8%. Who's right? Let's use the numbers for the last 100 years, see how they worked out over the last 100 years. Let's just say somebody has $1,000,000 and they want to take out 3% a year, which is 2,500 a month. There's a withdrawal rate. So if we use Suze Orman's numbers, 2,500 a month, beginning with $1,000,000. Let's give 3% COLA. We're going to be consistent all the way through here. 3% COLA on $1,000,000. So in other words, you start out with 2,500, which is 30,000 a year. Increase that by 3% going down through here, and we're going to run it for every single year for the last 100 years using the S&P 500 returns. So how many times? Again, we always like to project ahead what might happen in the future based on what's happened in the past, because we have 100 years worth of data, both good decades and bad decades. Okay, let's do the 3% rule. How many times in the last 100 years would you run out of money? This is going to update it for every single year. We're going to see how much you have left after 10 years, 20 years, and 30 years. I want you to notice something. 100% of the time, you'd still have money left after 20 years, and 98.6% of the time, you'd have money left after 30 years. The only problem year would have been 1929. We've looked at this many times on this channel. 1929 was a horrible string of down years. Down 4, down 35%, down 3 more. That's the only time, and then you'd run out of money in 22 years. Every other scenario, you'd have money left. In fact, lots of money left. If you look down through this column, 30 million, 20 million, the 20-year column, 4 million. I mean, it's all kinds of money. So it looks like you can safely withdraw more than 3%. I guess if Suze Orman is right, then yeah, there is one time in the last 100 years you'd run out of money, and that's if we have returns going forward like these of the 1929 and the Depression type years. Let's move up a little bit. How about the 4% rule? The closest I can come is 3.9%. Let's update this. Again, 1929, if you're running out taking out 3%, you're definitely going to run out of money taking out 3.9%. But how about the rest of the times? Now we've got 1930 entering the picture. But still, 97% of the time you have money left after 20 years, and 97% of the time after 30 years, you'd be running out of money, or not running out of money. Let's go up to whatever. Let's see. Haven't done 5% yet, have we? Okay, let's do 5%. 5% rule. Remember, we're going between Suze Orman's 3% and Dave Ramsey's 8%. I keep leaving this on 1929 type numbers, which makes it look really bad. Okay, now we're up to 6% of the time you'd run out of money in 20 years, and 7% of the time you'd run out of money in 30 years. So as a 5 point, again, this is 5.1%. So it looks like you'd be in really good shape most times with the 5.1% rule. I just recently saw somebody, is it safe to do 6%? Let's do 5,000 a month, which would be exactly 6% of the withdrawal rate. How many times in the last 100 years? Again, we're using the numbers for the last 100 years. None of them are going to be exact of what going forward, but it can give us a range. How often would you run out of money taking out 6%? Run out of money 11% of the time over the last 100 years after 20 years, and 14% of the time after 30 years. And let's be looking at the graph here for a second. Here's the actual graph. This to show you, when you see it, when you eyeball it this way, it looks like, oh, that doesn't look bad at all. Look at all these times you'd have over 2. Remember, you're starting with 1 million, you have over 2 million, 4 million, 6 million. A lot of the time you'd be just fine. Getting a little bit iffy right here in 1937. But again, how many times? 11% of the time you'd run out of money in the last 100 years using the 6% rule. Okay, let's go up to, what would 7% be? We'll do 6.9%. Again, we're just going from the range from 3%. Suze Orman says you got to keep it to 3%. The 4% rule has been standard for decades. Dave Ramsey says no, you can easily take out 8%. Okay, now we're up to 20% failure rate in a 20-year period and 26% failure rate in a 30-year period. It's starting to be a lot more reds going down through here. What's the graph look like? Again, Depression years, 1937, and now that's picked 1973 and 74 type numbers are kind of, especially the late 60s here, are starting to take a toll. And also the year 2000. Why? What's going on in those years? We got 2 down. Remember, whenever you have more than one consecutive down year, that's when you can run into problems. Of course, the Depression was very obvious, but even the 2000s, you had 3 down years. And that starts causing problems. But look, even in 1973 and 74, you had 2 down years. Remember, if you're taking money out when the market's going down, you're selling low. That's why people recommend having an asset allocation. I often recommend a 60-40 allocation. Let's go ahead and do the 60-40 right here on the 6.9%, which is basically 7%. Let's see if 60-40 would make much difference. I'm going to update this. Right now, we got a 20% failure rate at the 7% withdrawal rate or close to it. Let's see if this goes down any. No, it actually goes up. And again, we've explained this in other videos. What we're doing is having a cash reserve account over here, a bucket that's paying you 3%, but you're taking out 6.9%. So you're actually in worse shape taking the bucket approach, changing your asset allocation if you're taking out too much. Again, if you left it all in the S&P 500, the problem isn't the fact that you're leaving it in the S&P 500 or doing a 60-40 split. The problem is you're taking out too much. You're taking out 6.9%. So we saw a 20% failure rate. Let's actually go up to Dave Ramsey's 8%, 8.1%. We're going to update this. This is why people were complaining so much about Dave Ramsey, because you can't take out 8% because you don't get it 12% or 11% every single year. Look at this, 33% of the time in the last 100 years, taking out 8%, excuse me, you'd run out of money. Here's the actual graph. There's a lot of times in the 60s and early 70s, around the year 2000, and definitely the Depression years, you'd be running out of money. So if you want to pick one that's closest, Suze Orman's a lot closer to being right, because you don't run out of money at all, except I think it was the 30th year or the 24th year of 1929 type numbers. 4% rule looks like it works almost all the time. Again, let's go ahead and do that one. 4.2%. Again, this is just, doesn't really matter what number over here is. We're just taking 4.2% of it and we're increasing that by 3%. How many times you run out of money with the 4% rule? Just 2% of the time, and that was during the Depression years. One other thing we could possibly look at, besides the 60-40 asset allocation, we could also cut the COLA back to 2%. Let's go ahead and raise this back up to the 6% rule and see how many times you run out of money. If you do a 60-40 split and just do a 2% COLA, in other words, 5,000 the first month and 5,100 the second year, and so on, then you run out of money 7% of the time. You have a success rate of 92.6 after 20 years and 84.5 after 30 years. I just want to run the numbers because there's such a debate. Suze Orman says the 4% rule is too high. Dave Ramsey said that's ridiculously low. You can go up to 8%. So I just wanted to show you these different numbers. And again, this is what we do on this channel. We run numbers for people. We can run all kinds of variables. We can change your asset allocation. We can change your COLA. We can change the withdrawal percentage that you want to take out. Again, this is kind of crucial though. If you're planning on $5,000 a month, then that would be 6% on $1 million. But that's what we do in this channel. We run numbers. Please consider subscribing. Please share this channel with others. Let them know that a channel out there that will run numbers, any other numbers, just to give them some idea what might happen in the future. Please like the video. Please comment on the video. I'd love to hear comments from you, what you'd like me to do. If I'm doing something that I'm not doing something you'd like me to do, let me know. Thanks for watching.